The snow fell like tiny stars. That December evening, as Daniel Carter drove his weathered pickup truck down the empty country road. At 32, he'd learned to appreciate the quiet moments when the world seemed to hold its breath. His hands, rough from years of construction work, gripped the steering wheel as he thought about the small apartment waiting for him and the leftover soup his neighbor had brought earlier that week. Life had taught him that kindness often came in unexpected packages, and tonight he was about to learn that lesson all over again. His headlights pierced the swirling snow when suddenly he saw her, a figure standing in the middle of the road, like a ghost from another time. As he drew closer, his breath caught. A young woman, maybe 26, with long golden hair that fell past her shoulders like liquid sunlight, even in the dim light. She wore a white dress, clearly a wedding gown, with delicate lace and fringe that danced in the winter wind. The hem was torn, mud-stained, and wet from the snow. Her feet were bare, red from the cold asphalt, and she clutched a pair of black heels in her trembling hands. But it was her eyes that stopped his heart, blue as summer sky, filled with fear and something else, determination. Daniel pulled over, his truck's engine rumbling softly in the stillness. He rolled down his window, letting the cold air rush into the cab. "Miss, you're going to freeze out here." His voice carried the gentle authority of someone who'd spent years helping others in their darkest moments. She looked up at him, and he saw tears glistening on her cheeks like tiny diamonds. "I can't go back," she whispered, her voice breaking like fragile glass. "Please, I just can't." Something in her tone reminded him of his sister Jessica, when their father had tried to force her into a life she never wanted. That same desperate courage of someone choosing freedom over safety. "Well, you can't stay here in this weather. Come on, get in." She hesitated for just a moment, looking back down the dark road, as if expecting someone to follow. Then she climbed into the warm truck, bringing with her the scent of roses and rain. Daniel reached behind his seat and pulled out a thick wool blanket. "Here, wrap yourself up." He turned up the heat, watching as she pulled the blanket around her shoulders like armor. "I'm Daniel," he said softly, not pushing, just offering his name like a bridge. "Claire," she whispered, and then stronger. "Claire Whitman." The name seemed to give her strength, as if saying it aloud made her real, made her choice matter. They drove in comfortable silence for several miles, the only sounds the heater's gentle hum and the soft whisper of snow against the windshield. Daniel had learned in his 32 years that sometimes the most important gift you could give someone was time and space to find their voice. Finally, Claire spoke, her words coming slowly, like water from a deep well. "I was supposed to marry him tonight. Jonathan Pemberton, the pharmaceutical heir." She paused, staring out at the snow-covered fields. "My father said it would save our family business." Daniel nodded, his eyes focused on the winding road, but his heart listening to every word. He'd seen enough of life's hard choices, to know that sometimes love and duty stood on opposite sides of an impossible divide. But you didn't want to marry him. It wasn't a question, just a gentle understanding. Claire's laugh was bitter as winter wind. I barely know him. He's 43, talks about nothing but stock options and golf handicaps. He's never asked what I dream about or what makes me happy. She turned to look at Daniel's profile, noting the kindness in his weathered face, the way his hands held the wheel, steady and sure. What do you dream about? Daniel asked quietly, and Claire felt something shift inside her chest. When was the last time anyone had asked her that question? I want to help people, she said, her voice growing stronger. I have a degree in social work, but my father says it's impractical. He wants me to be a wife, a hostess, a beautiful ornament for someone else's life. Daniel pulled into the parking lot of Murphy's Cafe, a small diner that had served the community for 3 generations. Warm light spilled from the windows, like hope, onto the fresh snow. How about some coffee, and maybe we can figure out what comes next? Inside the diner, with its faded photographs and the smell of fresh pie, Claire's story unfolded like a map to freedom. She told him about the inheritance from her grandmother, enough money to start over if she was brave enough, about the job offer at a women's shelter 2 states away that she'd been too afraid to accept. Daniel shared his own story, how he'd left his father's accounting firm to work with his hands, building homes for families who needed them, how scary it had been to disappoint people, but how right it had felt. My grandmother used to say. Daniel stirred sugar into his coffee. That courage isn't about not being afraid. It's about being afraid and doing the right thing anyway. Claire smiled, and Daniel thought it was like watching the dawn break after the longest night. The shelter job, is it still available? He asked. I think so. Director Martinez said she'd hold it for 2 weeks. That was 10 days ago. Daniel pulled out his phone. What's her number? As Claire dialed, her hands shaking, Daniel watched this brave young woman choose her own life over everyone else's expectations. The conversation was brief, but when she hung up, tears of relief streamed down her face. She still wants me. I can start Monday morning. When dawn painted the sky in soft pastels, Daniel drove Claire to the bus station. But before she left, she pressed something small into his calloused palm, a silver locket, worn smooth by loving hands. This was my grandmother's. She taught me that kindness creates ripples that never end. Years later, Daniel would receive letters from Claire, now director of Safe Harbor Shelter, telling him about the women and children she'd helped find their way to new lives. The locket sat on his dresser, a reminder that sometimes the most important thing we can do is help someone find the courage to save themselves in life's storms. When the path seems impossible, we all need someone to remind us that it's never too late. to choose hope over fear and freedom over the chains we never chose to wear.